And that's the end of that. Apparently, it wasn't transmitting too well, but I tried. That is the uh, the theme of Prometheus, um, and it was played by this person, Kate Maestrova. Very well. I've never heard just a piano only like rendition of that, and it's very cool to hear. But if you want to actually hear it good quality, then check that out. Why is this choppy? It's probably choppy because I'm planning on talking about UFOs. Let's see here. Maybe I can make it less choppy. Um, Gosh, I look so different. It's weird looking at myself. I trim my beard up. I haven't had this short of a beard in like, I don't even know how long. Over a year. Let's see. How is it now? Is it still choppy? Please hit the like button. It really helps with the algorithm. And subscribe. Haven't already. I still can't spell. I'll never be a good speller. Okay. But I want to talk a bit tonight about UFOs without being kicked off, because this is a topic that I've had a weird relationship with my whole life. I grew up basically just thinking like most atheistical, scientifically minded people do, and thought there has to be life in the universe because it's such a big place and it's just kind of inevitable that there's technological life out there, even not just life. And then I eventually came across Bob Lazar when I was in, who we're going to speak about a bit. We've spoken about him a bit before. When I was in middle school and elementary school, and he was a physicist who claimed to work at Area 51 after he confirmed to have worked at Los Alamos Labs, which is where the United States government does a lot of its science, and it is where they worked on the atom bomb and, lots of other projects that the government is doing. I have friends that have, their families live there and work there, and it's, they're geologists, so it's, they're not working on UFOs, but probably, maybe, who knows, but or the atom bomb, but they are, just doing science. And so uh, I came across this guy. Story was very convincing, lots of corroborating evidence to support his story that at least he worked where he claimed to have worked and saw things that he claimed to have seen, but that doesn't mean that what he was told was true. Who knows? There's no way of, knowing that, but at least with what we have available. And after that, I wrote a paper in middle school basically saying that the government was morally obligated to tell us that there was aliens if they knew. Okay, so that it was immoral for them to keep it a secret, and they had to tell us. And so then I kind of continued, researching just random things about, space and stuff all the time. Came across the Fermi paradox, and the Fermi paradox states that eventually a civilization that doesn't end will take over and spread throughout the universe, and therefore you would see them everywhere, wherever you looked, and there's more to it than that. There are certain assumptions about things called Dyson spheres or Dyson swarms, where basically stars are surrounded by basically like solar panels, not necessarily solar panels, but energy harvesting technology, and then therefore blocking out of the light, and we would see large dark patches in the sky, and that would be evidence of technological civilizations in far off places that were slowly spreading throughout the galaxy and then the universe. And but we don't see that, and the fact that we don't see that is evidence that there is either no other technological civilizations out there, or that it is inevitable that a technological civilization destroys itself before it becomes able to spread throughout, the multiple solar systems. And, there's lots of proposed solutions to the Fermi paradox, and they range in what those solutions are. Basically, they are explanations as to why there still could be life, but we just don't see it, or explanations to why we don't see life. And one of them is that technology destroys us before we spread. The other one is, that life that reaches the point of that level of tech is existing on a dimension, essentially, which isn't the right word, but you get it, in the common use of the phrase, it's the right word, that we just aren't operating at for the most part, so we can't see it, but it is all around us and we just don't see it. So there's lots of proposed explanations for this, or the other solution is that we are alone, and that there is and sorry if you hear scratching, my lizards are like freaking out, but basically we are alone in the universe, essentially, and is a common explanation. And that could be due to the fact that technology destroys us, or God made the universe just for us, or it's a simulation just for us, or it's a simulation just for you. I mean, there's lots of solutions. But I basically came to believe that we're either the first technologically advanced civilization, which is one of the proposed solutions to the Fermi paradox, or tech destroys us. That was kind of my first one, was basically that we were the first. That's a hopeful view. Second one was very doomful view, was after I had some realizations about tech and politics, more so politics than tech, but it's tech's interaction with politics, and their compounding impact on each other that causes this revelation. So you have to have two revelations. You have to have one which anybody realizes that we'll have the technology. We already have the technology to destroy ourselves, and or to at least halt civilization, which is destroying. And then the next, a lot of people will be techno optimists, and they'll be like, well, we always figure out a way to get around things. And it's like, when you get involved in politics, and as many of you know, I came from the political world, you just have a much less view on our much less hopeful view of our ability to escape our own destruction over time, by our own, ingenuity, because you just realize how incentive structures make it so that the people that should be in control of this tech at any given moment are not the ones in control of this tech, eventually. All tech, bombs, genetically engineered viruses, all kinds of things. And then I basically forgot about the entire, idea of aliens, or, whatever they are, if they exist, and beings from other worlds. And then I basically came to the belief that there was probably a technologically advanced civilization on Earth before us, and that it's possible that they are still around, some of them, remnants, and that they may be confused for aliens, but they would be from here originally. And I kind of abandoned the idea that there was aliens on other worlds. And personally, emotionally, a lot of people will say things like, "Oh, I want to believe." It's like a phrase in the amongst like this whole topic. It's like, I want to believe. I don't want to believe. I am somebody who has, like, the most frightening movie in the world to me is Signs. It's also one of my favorite movies, but it is terrifying. Like, it's so terrifying that once when I was in high school, though it came on the television randomly, no such thing as randomness, but it came on the television unprompted. Somehow it was on, I don't know, HBO was on or something like that, and Signs was on, and I was just at the computer. It was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning. My brother was asleep on the couch, and I was just on the computer. And the music freaked me out so much that I couldn't move to go shut it off. Not that I think it's a bad movie. Like I said, it's one of my favorite movies, but I don't want to watch it when I'm the only one awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. And once I went to go rent it, and I went, this was in Blockbuster days, so like, that's how long ago this was. And I go up to the guy who was working at Blockbuster, and I was like, "You don't have Signs. Like, where is Signs?" And he was like, "We have Signs. It's in stock." And I was like, "Well, it's not on the shelf." And I was like, I looked through the whole horror section, and he was like, "It's not a horror movie. It's a drama." And so I felt a little bit like ridiculous at that moment, because it's not supposed to be a horror movie, but it's a very scary movie. Everybody who sees it kind of like knows it's at least supposed to be a horror movie, even if you don't find it scary. So I don't want to believe, but the government then recently has stated that they have been tracking UFOs for decades. And we've known this multiple points throughout history, with Project Blue Book in the 1950s. The U.S. Air Force had a project called Project Blue Book, and it was totally confirmed. And basically, they claimed that it was their attempt at investigating UFOs, and it was probably both simultaneously an investigation of UFOs and also a disinformation campaign to tell us whatever they think we needed to hear to remain calm. And but there's lots of funny cultural references from that we don't even know. So Dr. Alan Hynek was the professor in charge, well, who headed the movement, and basically of Project Blue Book. And so he created the scale of Close Encounters of the First Kind, the Second Kind, and the Third Kind. So everybody knows the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which basically means like direct contact with like beings, not just a sighting, which is like the first kind, I think, or maybe the second kind, and then the first kind is like you hear about it, something like that. And but the third kind is like direct impact, like on, or you have been had a direct impact interaction of some type. So, and then I think the second kind was evidence, and the first kind is a sighting. That's what it is. So if it leaves behind physical evidence, it's the second kind. The first kind is sighting, and the second kind is, or the third kind is like an interaction, like abduction or something like that. And so most people don't know that came from the Air Force's Project Blue Book, that scalar system. So there was lots of UFO sightings throughout history. There's so many videos and photos of these sightings, but deducing which ones are real and which ones aren't is a minefield, and or at least has been up until recently, when the government acknowledged videos of craft that they had taken and that were leaked by the Pentagon, or the Pentagon confirmed them, and they were taken by the Navy. So we're going to look at some of those. We're going to talk about the possibilities of what this could be. Now, kind of has brought this whole topic back to the forefront of my mind over the past like year, and I want to get a bit into the physics implications of this over time, but I want to just give in today an overview of what the history is that is more like confirmable, I guess you could say. And there's lots of stuff out there. Way more than people think. Most people think that this is like the subject of cranks, I guess, like, and it's very hard for it not to be, but I also think that that's partially been by design. And I don't think that that is a total accident. Like, when somebody says I saw a ghost, you don't think that they're crazy always. Like, you might not think that they saw a ghost, but you're not like, you're a nut job. Like, what, you're like a crazy person with crazy hair, and like, you're not this guy. Illuminati? Don't be ridiculous. Aliens. There's so many memes. Aliens. Like, and I see your logic and replace it with aliens. Like, there's just so many memes for this. I don't even know who this guy is. That's very funny. Oh my gosh. Aliens, humans. Yeah. Hilarious. But, anyways, there's so much truth in that meme. I've never seen that meme, but it's very funny. Let's see what the chat clips. It was just the music that was choppy. Okay. Hey now, Banana Booey. Hero. The bell curve and the golden ratio of human types. I believe it should mirror the ecosystem or nature itself. Us types are pretty much the wild wildebeest or sardines of humans. Well, at least possibly. I'm confused. It's kind of like how termites and mantids are on opposite sides of the spectrum and rarely interact, but roaches are kind of in the middle and interact with both sides. Yeah, this is like, I've discussed this before, how basically there is this triality that's observed everywhere, and they even call the particles in the standard model of like a muon and a tau and an electron, they call them species, or they did. And it's funny because they used to call, like, instead of saying this model of an aircraft or this model of a car or this model, it's like instead of saying what model fighter jet is that, in like the 1950s and earlier, 1920s, 30s, 40s, they used to say this species of plane, this species of car, because the fact that it was a creation had nothing to do with whether or not we should change the name, because everybody believed that we were creations. But the thing is there's still a difference between a car and a plane and a sentient being. A car and a plane is not a sentient being, but a roach and a termite and a human and a mantis are sentient beings. So that's who should probably be referred to as species. I don't even think you should refer to the various particles in the standard model as species. It doesn't make sense. But you could refer to the various elements as species, but not, that would be more accurate, I will say. So, because they're alive, you could refer to different chemicals as different species of molecule, essentially. But back to UFOs. This basically erupted in the United States in the 1940s because pull this up for us to read. In 1947, in July, in Roswell, New Mexico, the RAAF, which was basically like, it was the Air Force, but there was a place called what was it? What did it used to be called? It was called Roswell Airfield, something like that. Roswell Air Force Base. Okay. Okay. It was called Walker Air Force Base. It is now closed, and it is located 3 miles south of the central business district of Roswell, New Mexico. It was opened in 1941 as an Army Air Corps flying school and was active during World War II and the post-World War era as Roswell Army Airfield. So the RAAF. That's what I'm referring to. And it is known for the Roswell UFO incident, an event that occurred on the 4th of July. I didn't know it was on the 4th of July. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. In 1947, it is alleged that a flying disc crashed during a severe thunderstorm near the base at Corona, New Mexico. So this is very interesting, actually, because for various reasons. But let me show you. So this was the paper the Roswell Daily Record. And on the front page, it said the RAAF, the Roswell Army Airfield, captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Okay. This was told to the media by the Air Force, not by kooks, by the Air Force. It was later recanted, and the story was changed to a weather balloon. Then the story was changed again in 1997, I think, or 94. Let's see. 1997. Or 1994 and 97. Okay, in 1994, the United States Air Force published a report identifying the crashed object as a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul. And in a second report in 1997 concluded that stories of alien bodies were probably from crash test dummies, because apparently that looks like an alien body, that was dropped from high altitude. By the way, what is going on? There's like explosions outside my apartment. That was odd. Somebody blew up a firework right above my apartment last night or the night before, but that didn't sound like a firework. But the crash test dummies that were being dropped by the U.S. Air Force looked nothing like aliens, obviously. They were 6 feet tall, they looked like a crash test dummy, and they had property of the U.S. Air Force stamped on them, and they had return for reward put on them. So nobody was going to confuse that with an alien. They would be like, that's a crash test dummy in the middle of the desert, and we should probably call this number so that we get some money. And this is why it was such a contested thing, because it was many, many people that said that there was all kinds of materials that were spread out in this field that was found by a rancher, and there was gashes in the ground from the crash, which would probably not have occurred from a weather balloon, or even a balloon from Project Mogul, which did have... Project Mogul had like these chains essentially attached to them, but they were still just balloons. Okay, like if they like this, they were kind of like that, but none of the tech in Project Mogul was like this, was actually like really classified tech. It was just the project that was classified, and it was a real project. It was real. It was going on at that time, but it is not like, it doesn't fit with what they found. Now, there are these pictures that do make it look like this was just like tinfoil, okay? But apparently these pictures were of material that was not actually from the crash, from what people have said since then, and that it was all replaced and it was all a staged photo op after basically the Air Force Base was told, you need to like get a hold of the story and retract your statement. Because to get a view of the competence of these people, we tend to look back in the past, and I've noticed this even with myself, and we think of people from 50 to 100 years ago as really, really ignorant and stupid. And the reality is that they were far less ignorant and stupid than we are today. They could fix things. They knew all the essential aspects of life that you know today, and then some. And our technology has gotten better, but our ignorance has grown. This is the problem with tech that I've talked about. This is why, if we were smarter than they used to be, then I wouldn't worry at all, and nobody should worry at all about the power of our technology destroying us. But we are not smarter than we used to be. We have discovered things that we didn't used to know, but we are not smarter at all. And if a balloon crashed, okay, do you think that the Air Force would be like, we found a flying saucer crashed in the desert? Even in the 1940s. Do you think a rancher would think that? Like, by the way, his ranch is next to the Air Force Base. It's not like this guy has never seen a plane or a weather balloon or, a hot air balloon. The Hot Air Balloon Festival, I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's in New Mexico, okay? Like, this is the Hot Air Balloon Festival. It's a very, very big event. Let's see the history of it. Hot Air Balloon Festival. It is a huge, huge thing. And it is in New Mexico every year. It's in Albuquerque. And the Balloon Fiesta. History. Let's see here. History. It started in 1972. Okay, so not quite as far back as 1940s, but you're telling me that people in New Mexico don't know what a balloon is? Guys, this is pictures from New Mexico. Okay? They know all about big balloons. They know more about big balloons than anybody else in the world. Albuquerque Balloon Festival. Okay, I know this isn't Project Mogul, but this is bigger balloons than Project Mogul in a way. At least they look more like a flying saucer than the balloons in Project Mogul do. Balloons in Project Mogul look like somebody tied a bunch of, I don't know, like little machines to a string attached to a balloon. Like this. Like that. Tied to a balloon. These are basically picking up basically like signals that the Russians were detonating nukes and testing them. But still a balloon, guys. Like, they're taking us for fools, and we are confirming. We're confirming it. And to further illustrate the competence of the Roswell Army Airfield, in the 1940s, it was the only military base in the world that was operationally capable and that had stationed at it nuclear weapons. The two nukes that were dropped on Japan, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were dropped by the bomber squadron that was stationed at the Roswell Army Airfield. That's the competence level of these guys. They're not fools who can't recognize a balloon. Okay? We are the fools that are believing the lies. Now, I'm not claiming to know where this thing came from that they found, but it wasn't what they're saying it is. And there's so much more evidence of that we can get into. So, for one, Let me pull this up. $38.70. Okay. This is a guy whose channel I definitely recommend. This is Richard Dolan, and Richard Dolan is a ufologist. Sounds like a crazy made up term, but you can't say that anymore because you'd have to basically claim that the Pentagon is. You can't claim that the Pentagon is lying, and also you can't. The Pentagon has now confirmed that there are UFOs. They're not saying where they're from. They're not saying they have any. They haven't confirmed any crashes or anything like that. They're basically saying we don't know what these are, and they do exist. So we're going to look at video of those in a minute. But this guy, Richard Dolan, very very sound, like very aware of what's going on in politics, in the political world of the world as well. And I know that because I work in it, and I can tell you this guy, I'm not saying he's right about everything, but I'm telling you he knows a lot of things, and he's very down to earth, which is funny to say of a ufologist. But so Ross, I still can't spell because I can't even spell Roswell. Roswell. Okay. It's funny because he looks like Hynek in
Hi, welcome to my weekly live stream.
in Project Blue Book, and he also sounds like him. It's odd that people that look a certain way also sound a certain way, and I mean it makes perfect sense because internally, uh, like your voice is the product of your structure, and your structure on the outside is, you know, probably also similar to your structure on the inside. So if you look similar on the outside, you probably look similar on the inside, and if you look similar on the inside, you're going to sound similar. But usually, but we're looking at 38 minutes and okay.
They should never have been destroyed. These also were destroyed.
Okay.
Destroyed. It's getting involved in this. So the GAO did. The GAO said, yeah,
Sorry.
more than top secret, highest priority. Now, this isn't even close to an exhaustive list of witnesses and testimony about Roswell, but you get the idea. And you also get the idea that by the 1990s, the U.S. Air Force was really in danger of losing control of the whole Roswell narrative. For instance, during the early 90s, a New Mexico congressman named Stephen Schiff started to look into the case. He'd gotten requests from constituents and some UFO researchers who lived in the area, and they made a good case, and Schiff's like, you know what? Why not look into this? So Schiff thinks this is pretty normal. I'm going to go talk to the Pentagon. Well, the Pentagon gave him nothing but rebuffs and stonewalled him. So Schiff's like, you know what? I'm going to go to the official investigative arm of Congress, because I'm a member of Congress, and this is called the General Accounting Office, the GAO. And the GAO said, yeah, we'll look into this for you. We're going to look into what happened at Roswell in 1947. Wow. Amazing. However, too bad for the GAO. They got nowhere as well. And one Pentagon liaison actually said to the GAO representative, go shit in your hat. Like, we're not going to cooperate with you at all. You have no business getting involved in this. So the GAO did finally finish its report, in July of 1995, and that it's an interesting report. It really gets lost in the shuffle when people talk about Roswell, but it's worth stating here. The GAO report was incredibly all the records, all the administrative records of Roswell Army Airfield from March of 1945 through December of 49 were inexplicably destroyed. Not only that, all of the outgoing messages from the base from October 1946 through December of 1949 which were all permanent records. They should never have been destroyed. These also were destroyed. Okay? The report made this very, very crystal clear that our search of these records was complicated by the fact that some records we wanted to review were missing, and there was not always an explanation. And Schiff was even more direct about this. He said, look, documents that should have provided more information were destroyed. The military cannot explain who destroyed them or why. And there was never any explanation or follow-up that ever happened on this. These were messages that would have shown us how the military officials in Roswell explained what happened to their superiors. Like, these are the outgoing messages. This is where we should have been able to read it, but they were all destroyed.
Guys, this is 50 years later. 50 years later. And people will say, well, you know, there was top secret stuff going on. There are photos that have been given out by the government of the SR-71 Blackbird, still the fastest confirmed plane to ever exist. Probably not actually the fastest plane ever, but the fastest plane that's ever been, you know, released to the public. And these photos are photos at Area 51 from when they were building it and when they were testing it. And we can see those, which is that is still the cream of the crop. Okay? You know how crazy that whole project was? It was such a crazy project that it was so top secret that the CIA created shell companies because they needed to make a plane out of titanium that could withstand the heat of the traveling at that speed and still be light enough to fly. And they'd never made a plane out of titanium. They needed so much titanium that they had to buy it from the USSR, which was who they were spying on. So the CIA created shell companies to buy the titanium from the communists that they were then using to build a plane that was the fastest plane in the world in order to spy on the communists. Okay, like, we can know all this, but we can't know what happened in Roswell and at all. Like, that is so top secret that we can know how to make an atomic bomb, which was around the same time. Okay? The same era of tech. We can know that, but we can't know what crashed in Roswell and really the real story behind it. Now they'll say, well, we did tell you the story. First we told you it was a weather balloon, then we told you it was Project Mogul. It's like, listen, there were other instances where balloons from Project Mogul crashed. And nothing happened, really. They just recovered it, and like, there was nothing to be said about it because it was a balloon. Balloons were not classified. It was just what the balloons were doing that was classified. None of the tech was classified. But the response from the military to Roswell was so incredibly insane that it was unlike anything that we had ever seen before. And they had said they recovered a flying saucer. They said it. And then a day or two later, they retracted the statement and said, oh, no, actually, it's just a weather balloon. We were mistaken for 2 days, you know, or however long it was. It doesn't even matter if it was 15 minutes. The people who were dropping nukes mistook a weather balloon that was their own project for a crashed flying saucer from another world. and we think people in the past were stupid. And by the way, I believed this story. Like, I never believed in Roswell. I always was like, even when I believed Bob Lazar, I didn't believe in Roswell. I was like, yeah, Roswell was Project Mogul. Like, I believe Bob Lazar because there's corroborating evidence. And by the way, Bob Lazar, guy who claimed to work at Area 51, a compound of Area 51 called Area S4, after, like I said, working at the Los Alamos Labs. That has been confirmed. He did work at Los Alamos Labs. He was paid by, after that as well, when he was working at Area S4 by the Navy, and that his W-2 exists, and it was basically confirmed by the Pentagon. I think it was confirmed by the Pentagon as being real, but then, everybody else that tried to follow up more on it was told, get out of my office. But I never believed in Roswell until I started looking more into it, and I was like, wow, I'm an idiot. Because I believed everybody else was an idiot. And, like, if you believe everybody else is an idiot and you're not, like, then you're usually the idiot. But, I mean, it obviously, like, there are instances, especially when you're working in this field of, like, the theory of everything space, that you are, nobody's the idiot, but I will say, like, you have to believe that you're onto something that's new if you're going to believe that you made a new discovery, and that even if other people don't believe you, obviously. But, like, this is not that kind of thing. This isn't scientific, cutting-edge scientific work that I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, do you mix up a spaceship with a balloon? Like, the initial witnesses of this debris said that you couldn't cut it, you couldn't burn it, you couldn't bend it, and then parts of it you could bend, you could basically crinkle it up and then let it go and it would just go right back. And then other parts of it were very, very thin, like foil almost, but you could hit it with a sledgehammer and nothing would happen. And that there was, like, plastic type of, beams and things like that. Plastics weren't that common back then. The rubber was used and was more common, but plastics weren't everywhere yet. And like, the materials of Project Mogul was like aluminum and like the bits of a weather balloon, like balsa wood. Like, nobody's confusing this stuff with, like, otherworldly tech. It's a balloon. Like I said, this was not classified technology. There's nothing part of this project that was, if you found it, unrecognizable at all. You might be like, what is this weird shape, like detector looking thing? But, like, you would be like, that's a detector or of some kind, or, you would probably think it was some kind of weather experiment by the government, but you wouldn't necessarily think it was detecting, explosions on the other side of the world, but you would be like, this is probably, like, detecting the weather. And you wouldn't think that it was a spaceship. So, further evidence of why Roswell was so interesting was because the government has confirmed now that a lot of these UFOs coincide with the areas of development for basically nuclear weapons. So where they were mining uranium, they were seeing a lot of these things in the sky and above our nuclear bases. Now they're seeing a lot of this above our aircraft carriers and destroyers in the Navy. They're seeing a lot of this. Our nuclear submarines, they're seeing a lot of these underwater, moving at hundreds of miles an hour, confirmed by the government, underwater. There's nothing that we know of that moves at hundreds of miles an hour underwater, by the way. Nothing. And it's very centered around technological and physics development. And I think that the reason why we are seeing an uptick in the sightings as of late, and also why this, which is why the government is now discussing this more, is because we are on the verge of at least a public, even if it's happened privately already in black projects, um, breakthroughs in physics. And obviously, I know this because this is what I do. And this is also basically a statement that has been confirmed by this guy named Hayam Ashed. Um, and Hayam Ashed is a basically visiting professor of aeronautics and astronautics at various space technology and research institutions. He's a retired brigadier general in the Israeli military intelligence. Ashed was the director of space programs for the Israel Ministry of Defense for nearly 30 years. He's a former chair of the Space Committee of the National Council of Research and Development for the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Space, and a member of the Steering Committee of Israel's Space Agency. Ashed is responsible for the launch of 20 Israeli-made satellites, and he's widely cited as the father of Israel's space program. Okay, so this guy, you couldn't get more like higher credentials. In 2020, Ashed became notable for promoting a UFO conspiracy theory, claiming that world governments were secretly working with aliens. And he said this. In December 2020, Ashed claimed in an interview with Israeli newspaper that the United States government had been in contact with extraterrestrial life for years and had signed secret agreements with a galactic federation in order to do experiments on Earth, and that there was a joint base underground on Mars and where they collaborate with American astronauts. He also stated that US President Donald Trump was aware of this and was on the verge of informing everybody of their existence, but was stopped by the aliens, essentially, who wished to prevent mass hysteria. And I mean, that's something that I've heard in other places, and I'm not saying that's true, but I'm just saying if anybody would know, this guy would know, and that's pretty profound if that's true. Obviously, that's more like, that's very profound. That's more profound than just something crashing. I'm not going to claim that he's right. I'm just saying that he had said something more specific than just that. Okay, so he said this. This is it. Said that they asked not to publish that they were here right before Trump was going to do it, and that humanity is not ready yet. Let me tell you something, too. If anybody would do it, Trump would have done it. And Ashed said the aliens were equally curious about humanity and were seeking to understand the fabric of the universe, but had said that waiting for until the day for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we understand in general what space and spaceships are. Okay? This is a very, very, very key statement that makes me actually like not want to believe him, because I don't really want to believe him for multiple reasons. One, if there's literally like a base on Mars and we're not told about it, and Elon Musk is like trying to develop rockets to go to Mars instead of like this, however they're doing it, which is not through rockets, it's through entanglement transportation. Like, what the heck? You know, like, you want to keep access to this tech very, you know, isolated? Go ahead, but like, you don't get to like tell us that it doesn't exist. That's insane. But I think that they would do that if it did exist. But to say this, waiting until the day for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we understand in general what space and spaceships are. He's not talking about rockets, folks. Okay, we know what rockets are. He's not talking about outer space. We know what outer space is. He's talking about space in general. And he's talking about how you would maneuver through that space without using relativity. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about understanding that space is an emergent perception that is the product and the summation of information processing due to entanglement structures between sentiences. And you need to know that if you're going to travel according to it. So you need to understand, basically, as it loads. That this is space. That's what he's talking about. Now, I'm not saying they actually understand everything, even here. I'm not sure of that. Like, we might be on a slightly different path than them because of their own existence. But this is a logical discussion that and just idea that I'm just exploring personally still, of like, what did they achieve? Why did they not achieve this? And how does that happen? And that's there's multiple explanations for it, but we can talk about it later. It's like the reverse of the my question isn't the Fermi paradox, it's the reverse of the Fermi paradox almost. It's like, why my question would be not why don't we see other life out in the universe. My question that would be more important, if we did know that there was other intelligent life out there, not intelligent life, technological life, technologically capable life. Why do we see them is a better question. If they exist, then why wouldn't we see them if they don't exist? If you get what I'm saying. Like, because it would mean that they didn't follow this, but it would mean that they're probably necessary for this to manifest. They're part of this, and there's lots of explanations for that, and I'll get into it in another video. But you have to ask, like, what changed between them versus us, and all kinds of just like all kinds of things. But this statement by Chaim Mashed is very interesting, and if Eric Weinstein is hoping through geometric unity partially to basically do this, and if we haven't already in private projects, geometric unity would be essentially the public acknowledgement of the physics necessary to do this type of tech, where you can basically have warp transportation. And what's interesting is I never watched Star Trek. I wasn't like a Trekkie, I guess you could say. I mean, you don't have to be a Trekkie to watch Star Trek, but I never have watched Star Trek other than the last ones that I think it was two. That was like the ones with I forgot his even name, but like the most recent ones, the updated ones, the ones with uh that was made by the guy who does all the lens flares. You know what I'm talking about. But someone can write it in the comments. That shows how like not I'm not a Trekkie, but I was talking to somebody who was, and they told me they were like, I was like saying, you know, if these things are going to show up, like it makes sense for them to like be more interested in us now, and it made sense that they would be, you know, in around our nuclear facilities as well, because that was a leap forward in tech, and it gave us the ability to destroy ourselves for the first time, and now we're having multiple things happen. One, biologically, we're having we're having pandemics that are the results of scientific work. Okay, which is like it's still our tech destroying us essentially. I mean, it brought the whole world came to a halt for like the last like year. So that is definitely would be concerning to any other biological beings. So is the creation of nuclear weapons. The next big concern would be the creation of warp transportation. And we are on the verge, like, of physics breakthrough that would lead to an understanding of that. So this is Pentagon UFO report. Okay. This was published 16 hours ago. If you didn't know, Trump did not tell us, by the way, just here we go. Trump Roswell. This is Trump talking about Roswell to his son in an interview in June of 2020. And Trump did not basically tell the world about the existence of aliens, but what he did do is in a bill that he signed, one of the last ones while he was in office, in an omnibus package, part of it was to require the Pentagon to reveal to the public what it knows about UFOs within, I think it was 90 days of, or within 6 months of the signing or something like that. It was by June, and we're in June. This is the last day of June, actually. So the Pentagon has now released their report, but this was prior to that.
Will you let us know if there's aliens? Because this is the only thing I really want to know. I want to know what's going on. Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on there?
So many people ask me that question.
I know it sounds almost ridiculous, but it's actually the real question.
Sounds like a cute question, but it's actually, there are millions and millions of people that want to go there, that want to see it. I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting. But Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
So you're saying you may declassify?
Oh.
You'll take it?
Well, I'll have to think about that one.
All right. Well, all right.
Okay. Clearly, this had come up, and every single elected official that has ever tried to get into this report basically has been shut down. Harry Reid, Lockheed Martin, for instance, Harry Reid was the leader of the Democrats for quite some time. And he was the former senator of Nevada. Nevada is where Area 51 is located. So if anybody knows about this stuff, it should be Harry Reid. And he was a major leader in the Democratic Party before his retirement. And he claimed that defense contractor Lockheed Martin may have fragments of a crashed UFO in its possession. Reid, aged 81, told The New Yorker that he has never actually seen proof of the remnants, but was rebuffed in his efforts to get Pentagon approval to find them. So basically he was told, F you, leave this alone. And he literally ran the state that Area 51 is in. Reid was a long-time senator from Nevada, home of Area 51. Exactly. He said this: I was told for decades that Lockheed Martin had some of these retrieved materials, the Democrat told media outlet. And I tried to get, as I recall, a classified approval by the Pentagon to have me go and take a look at the stuff. They would not approve it. I don't know what all the numbers were, what kind of classification it was, but they would not give that to me. This guy had some of the highest clearances that you can possibly have. He was the head of the Democratic Party. He was the leader of the state that Area 51 was located in. He was well aware of its existence. He was literally told, go shit in your hat, like the other guy, essentially. You don't get access to this. Then okay. So Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, who ran for the presidency, tried to get access to what was called the Blue Room or Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was where they took the wreckage, apparently. Whatever was recovered from Roswell, New Mexico was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, whether it was, balloon or not. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the Air Force Base that is the headquarters of the Air Force. And so there's long history of bodies and UFOs being kept there. It was, at least it used to be, I'm not sure what it is like now, but it was in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. It was an open secret at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that they had bodies of aliens. And nobody was, very few people, if they did have this, I don't even want to say aliens, but beings from another civilization. Very few people were allowed access to this, and there's underground facilities there that are known and have been apparently no longer used for this, at least, but they were allegedly used to stash this stuff for a long time. But if you were stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base during, not necessarily now, but because I don't know what it's like now, but the 1980s and 70s and 60s, I guarantee you that everybody just knew that there were these things there. And I've watched countless interviews of people, and basically the consensus is new guy would show up, and then somebody would be giving them a tour and being like, have you heard about our aliens? Ha ha ha. And everybody that ever asked about it was never denied. It was just don't talk about it. It was widely known that this was going on, and it was also widely known that you're not supposed to talk about it. And you didn't see it if you were stationed there necessarily. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is huge, and also this was obviously, if this does exist as a project, it is the most classified project in the world, probably. And I mean, no matter what these things are. But Barry Goldwater ran for president, and he tried to gain access to the supposed Blue Room, which was this underground room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and was flatly denied access. This, by the way, is known, like, he said this. So in March of 28th of 1975, Goldwater wrote, "The subject of UFOs has interested me for a long time. About 10 or 12 years ago, I made an effort to find out what was in the building at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was called Hangar 18, where the information has been stored that had been collected by the Air Force and was understandably denied by this request. It is still classified above top secret." This is where the term came from. Goldwater wrote further that there were rumors the evidence would be released and that he was just as anxious to see the material as anyone else. And then in April 25th, 1988, the New Yorker carried on an interview where Goldwater said he repeatedly asked his friend, General Curtis LeMay, okay, this is a general, if there was any truth to the rumors that UFO evidence was stored in a secret room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and if he, Goldwater, might have access to the room. According to Goldwater, an angry LeMay, this was his friend, by the way, gave him holy hell and said, "Not only can't you get into it, but don't you ever mention it to me again." In a 1988 interview on Larry King Radio, Goldwater was asked if he thought the U.S. government was withholding UFO evidence. He replied, "Yes, I do." He added, "I certainly believe in aliens in space. They may not look like us. They may have but I have very strong feelings that they have advanced beyond our mental capabilities. I think some highly secret government UFO investigations are going on that we don't know about and probably never will unless the Air Force discloses them." This man ran for president and was a top contender. And he was senator of Arizona, which is my home state. So this is these people are not people. There are people that would know about some of this stuff who have been saying some of these things, and you have to take it kind of seriously. Whether or not you believe it's aliens or not doesn't matter. So now, the Pentagon UFO report. This was the report was released on June 25th of 2021. So literally a few days ago. Haven't read through it all yet, but I've read through summaries of it, and we'll go into it further on another day. But the Pentagon released a much anticipated report on UFOs to Congress. The military has rebranded unidentified flying objects as unidentified aerial phenomena. By the way, Alan Hynek was the guy who created the term UFO, the guy who headed Project Blue Book and came up with first kind, second kind, third kind. He also came up with UFO, unidentified flying object. There wasn't even a term. They used to call them Foo Fighters and ghost rockets and all kinds of things when in like the prior to the 1940s prior to the 1950s. They called them Foo Fighters and ghost rockets in the military because they were the pilots were seeing them and they had no idea what they were, and then our radar was seeing them and had no idea what they were, and they were going thousands of miles an hour, which was impossible at the time. By our technology, we didn't even have jet engines yet. But the report of, that the Pentagon released says there's no convincing evidence that alien spacecraft have been spotted, but some of the data defy easy interpretation. So basically, we have no idea what these things are, but no evidence of aliens, just evidence of technology that's far beyond us, and but no evidence of aliens. Okay. This is the 3 videos that were declassified by Pentagon. This is our military pilots. Okay. This is just the beginning of these releases. Leaked to the New York Times in 2017. Okay. Like I said, there's so much more video footage than has been kind of acknowledged by the military. So look at this. UFO, New York City. This is CBS News 10 years ago. I think I've showed this, but these were just above New York City, just flying around for an extended period of time. This video is 8 minutes long. They don't disappear the entire video, and they're there when the video starts. And they're clearly purposely hanging out together. They're not hitting each other either. They move very organically, which is weird. They're not balloons. That would be everybody's first thought. But look, they're glowing. And like, by the way, guys, you think this is balloons? Look at the crown. The debunkers will come in and be like, "Oh, it's balloons." Do balloons like cause everybody in the street to be like, "Look at that"? You have to tell me everybody here has never seen a balloon flying through the sky. Everyone I know has seen a balloon flying through the sky. You know what we don't do? This. Yeah. Okay. Balloons. Look at this. Other governments have been more forthright about this, but UFO. This is not another government, but I know I spelled that wrong. I can see it, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so first of all, the Chilean Navy released this.
CEFA, the Chilean government agency which investigates UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena, has declassified and released never-before-seen video from 2014 showing a mysterious flying object of which they suggest could have been a UFO. According to a press release from the agency, a Navy helicopter spotted the unidentifiable object while patrolling a coastal region near Santiago, Chile. The unknown object was seen flying at a constant speed, similar to that of the helicopter, and moving forward. The pilot tried several times to communicate with the object, but he received no reply. Air traffic control failed to detect any flying objects on radar. In 2 instances, the object ejected some type of gas or liquid with high thermal tracking. Captured on video, you can see a massive plume of material trailing behind the object. Moments later, a second ejection of the unspecified discharge. The flying object was visible for about 10 minutes before disappearing into the clouds without a trace. What could it be? Was it a UFO? Air Force photo analysts confirmed that the 3-dimensional object was real, with volume and showcased control in its movements. They established that there was no evidence of hoaxing or alteration of the video by any computer application in the editing and processing of the images. Officials also ruled out a bird or flying insect, a drone, parachute, or a hang glider. After an extensive study, the Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena agreed it had all the characteristics to be classified as an unidentified aerial phenomenon. For FoxNews.com, I'm Rob Demetrius.
What the heck is going on with, like, that, like, literally,
Aerial trailing behind the object.
it's like brings a whole new light to the term chemtrails, and you can't even, like, I'm not a chemtrails guy, like, I don't know anything about chemtrails, except that looks like a chemtrail, okay? Like, I don't know what that is.
Visible for about 10 minutes.
I don't know what the purpose of that is, but that thing clearly purposely released this, and what the heck is that? That's what I want to know. Like, what is that? This is video released by the Chilean Navy. Okay? There's more. Where is the... Tucker Carlson is the most honest person in news. Like, he still does too much complaining because that's all everybody does in politics and media nowadays, which sucks. But like, I'm glad he tries to be honest.
Just a few weeks ago, the Navy admitted for the first time that several UFO videos were real, meaning they show actual area phenomenon that so far the Pentagon cannot explain. Now, a UFO investigations group says they have found materials that could potentially be physical evidence of UFOs. Luis Elizondo is director of special programs at the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. He also headed the Pentagon's Office for Investigating UFO Incidents, and it's the star of the History Channel's Unidentified. He joins us tonight. Luis, thanks so much for coming on. So, what is this material, and why could it shed light on the question of what UFOs might be?
Sure. Well, our company over the last year and a half has actually obtained quite a bit of material. And let me first preface by saying some of that material that's providence is frankly hearsay, while the providence of some of this material has been substantiated. And ultimately, we're in the process of analyzing this material at three different levels. We're looking at its physical properties, its chemical, or if you will, molecular properties, and then ultimately its atomic properties. And it's really at that point we'll be able to make some sort of definitive conclusion, keeping in mind that we still have to follow the scientific process. And
by the way, do you see those lights right there? That looks a lot like what was above New York City. Okay?
And at the same time have peer review. So it's not just as simple as coming out and saying, hey, look what we found. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
I bet that's right. And of course, should be challenged as you ought to be challenged, I think.
Absolutely.
But quickly sum it up for us. Why do you think this material might be connected to UFOs?
Well, without getting into a lot of detail right now, because it's frankly, it's too speculative for me at this point to say why I think something. At the end of the day, it's going to be what the analysis tells us. And if you have, for example, interesting isotopic ratios that are not normally found, let's say, on this planet, then you have to scratch your head and either A, it's been engineered that way, or B, it came from somewhere else. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to find out.
So these are materials brought to you by people who say this is at the site of a UFO incident or a crash?
In some cases, yes. Again, unfortunately, I can't elaborate too much with some of these individuals. We do have non-disclosure agreements, but it's from various sources, both private and governmental.
It goes up.
Okay. So, this was, by the way, was Phoenix Lights incident. The Phoenix Lights was, you know,
saw it many years ago. You
you'll see.
remember when it happened. But if you didn't see it,
I'm
then
from
we know
Tucson,
that
which is just south of Phoenix, so I remember this.
you heard about it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of believers out there. On March 13th, 1997, mysterious lights suddenly appeared over Phoenix and over much of the state. As ABC 15's Nick Vinzant shows us, 17 years later, some people are still trying to explain what really happened.
At first, I saw them far west.
It was 17 years ago, but Lynn Kitai remembers exactly what she saw above her Phoenix home.
Whoever did this not only wanted to be seen, but wanted to wake us up. That
I mean, who knows? But this is video. It was seen by from all the way from Flagstaff, Arizona, where I went to school, all the way across Phoenix and down south of Phoenix.
Well, at first, a mystery investigations attributed the lights in the sky to a combination of planes and military flares.
Right.
But Kitai doesn't believe it.
Yeah. By the way, look at that. Okay, guys, let me tell you something. This lasted hours. And it traveled from Flagstaff, Arizona, which is 4 hours drive. It's 250 miles. I know because I drove it again and again and again. All the way down across Phoenix to Tucson, Arizona, essentially. And like people saw structures too sometimes, like not just lights. That's not flares, guys. They're doing the whole like ridiculous this is a weather balloon BS. And it's funny because Hynek gave in Project Blue Book in the 1950s gave this explanation for UFO, and he said it was swamp gas reflections. Okay, and like it became a phenomenon because that's Hynek basically talking about swamp gas. It became like a whole joke because now there's this part even in Men in Black where, you know, I think Jay is like explaining to these people who had just seen like this alien guy like get shot. He's like, you didn't really see that. Really, it was like light reflected from swamp gas and bounced off the atmosphere. And it's just the most ridiculous thing you could ever hear. And it's in the middle of New York City. And what's funny about it, though, is that what you don't realize is that's a cultural reference to when the Air Force had this guy, Alan Hynek. Basically, he looks like Richard Dolan, which is so funny. He had a Project Blue Book.
Again, nothing to do with the sighting of March 21st.
But he basically, in an explanation, said swamp gas bounced off like, you know, this and like created, you know, the sighting of a UFO. And it was just like they couldn't explain it, and they basically just came up with what the best they could. Same thing with Roswell. They couldn't explain it, so they were like, oh, it's a weather balloon. And now, you know, for the Phoenix lights, they're like, there were flares that just happened to travel 250 miles and remain in the sky for hours. And by the way, like, I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Okay, Tucson, Arizona has this place. Okay, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base has the largest stash of planes in the world. In the world. This is where I'm from. Everybody in Arizona knows exactly where this is. This is literally like 5 minutes from my parents' house. Okay. This, if you live near this, you don't mistake military planes flying in the sky, which happens every single day, and flares, which happens every now and then, for UFOs. Okay? Planes are not UFOs to people in Arizona. This is Arizona. This is where I'm from. Like, somewhere over there. Near those mountains. Is where I grew up. Every day, jets were flying. Every single day. Military jets. Like, it wasn't rare. It was every day. Nobody was going to be mistaking like military planes for UFOs. Like nobody. I love those mountains. If you grew up in an area with mountains, then you know your mountains very well. Like you know them like someone's face. And I grew up chasing lizards and snakes in those mountains. But now the government has confirmed that there's UFOs everywhere. They see them every day, by the way. The Navy has admitted, basically. But where's the good one? By the way, I spoke to a hacker who works for the government and big tech companies. His job is to pull things off the internet that are classified, and he said he pulls a lot of UFO things off the internet. And I know that old videos of Bob Lazar get pulled from the internet all the time, old ones. And oh my gosh, let's unplug my computer, and my computer's basically a desktop now because its battery is so bad. But here we go. UFO Puerto Rico. But I can't find the Puerto Rico one. And I wonder if they deleted it off the internet because it was so good. It was so clear, guys. It was ridiculous. But it really does look like it's gone. It should be the top result. Is this it? It's a different June 10th upload. This is a different video of that object. Because guess what? Mofo's pulled it down. I'm telling you, I'm being serious. They're only showing us what they want us to see, not things that are really, really good. Look at that. It's like it's been made like it's like they changed the footage because it's like trying not to get hit by YouTube's algorithms recognizing it as the same video. But this is it cruising above an airport. This is a way closer up video than I am used to seeing it. But what's weird is you can see it's an object, but it's like there's like a field around it, and which makes sense with what its propulsion systems would be. Never seen it this up close. And it goes into the water, and it's like it's not even impacted by the water. And it's funny because in this video, it flies above. Whoa, look at that. Dang. I used to watch this movie called Flight of the Navigator when I was a little kid, and that is exactly what that looks like. This is it, by the way. It was like a kid's movie. I thought it was so cool. Flight of the Navigator. I was obsessed. Here's the trailer.
David, what time did you enter the woods? Around 8 o'clock. Then what happened? Reached this cliff, transmitting in alpha waves with complex frequency patterns in the mind. I knew I fell.
It's 1986, man. 8 years since that night. This is totally rad. I mean, you're my big little brother.
Take a look at this. Where did this come from?
Gosh, look at it.
From the mind of a 12-year-old boy.
Just wait. voice keeps calling, saying something over and over. I can't understand.
Sit down. You have the information required to complete my mission. Send Every0ne to borrow samples of life from different galaxies for study. On this planet, I chose you.
Why me?
Why not?
So 80s. Gotta love it. So funny. But that thing, it's remarkable how close that is, by the way, to some, like, stories of people who have supposedly actually worked on some of these craft. And it's remarkable how close that looks to that. Look at it. I doubt this was somebody who was like, oh, let's recreate Flight of the Navigator. They probably have never seen that movie. I feel like it wasn't that famous. But it's in this video, though, you can see it's how it's traveling makes it very hard to see. And I always get a kick out of the fact that if you notice, it flies right above, even though this has been noticed by the airport that it's flying over. That's why they're tracking it on this camera. It flies over these cars that are just driving around. I guarantee you none of them saw it. It's almost like it disappears while it flies above the cars. It just like cloaks itself almost, like it, or it's just difficult to see because of the field around it that it's using to move. But watch it go into the water. It's like it doesn't even stop. Yeah, that's it. That's it going straight into the water. It's so hard to see because of however it's moving. If you're using entanglement transportation, you're not just like floating, you are like drifting between dimensions. I guess that's a good way of putting this drifting object. Look at it. It's like the water hasn't even impeded it. It's just under the surface. It's still being tracked. It's like an intergalactic shark. There have been multiple Apollo astronauts who have basically said that the NASA knows about UFOs and that they saw things on the moon even, and that they used their encrypted channel that they used for medical incidents as well to communicate it always, and they were specifically instructed, do not ever say that you see UFOs when you're on the moon, essentially. But they definitely took down, it looks like, that video that we just watched. They took down the normal version of it. Why did they take it down? It was viewed like a lot. This is not it. I mean, I've seen it countless times. It should come up. This is what happened to me with the Bob Lazar video too, the old one. It's just gone. And the hacker that I spoke to, I mean, he's like one of the top 10 best hackers in the world. He goes by data on Clubhouse. If anyone wants to look into that, he straight up said, he's like, I can't elaborate more, but I'll tell you, like, I'm contracted to take things off the internet involving, UFOs. And it looks like they got this one. Wait, here. This is the same video as what I'm talking about, I think, but look at this. Guys, 35 views uploaded May 6th. This is exactly what happened with the Bob Lazar video too. I was like, why doesn't this have millions of views? It's the best Bob Lazar video out there. This looks like it was taken down on another one of it, and now you only have this one that has 35 views. 35 views? It was uploaded May 6th. That was, long enough ago that it should have more views, but something is going on where, like, they don't want us to see some stuff. I do believe NASA is lying about a lot of things, but I also do think we went to the moon, but I also think going to the moon is useless. I know some people don't think we went to the moon, and that's fine. Maybe we didn't. Let me tell you, two of the smartest people that I know don't think we went to the moon. And they are literally two of the smartest people that I know. Like, two people that I look up to don't think we went to the moon. So it's very possible we didn't go. But I think that they deleted a lot of the original tapes because, for the same reason, we can't see anything from Roswell, New Mexico between 1960 and 1946 and 1949. It's all gone. They deleted everything. Why? It's like, why did they delete the NASA tapes? Was it because they're totally incompetent? Or was it because we didn't really go? Or was it because there was other crap that went down that they don't want us to see? I tend to be towards that. But I don't fault people for believing that it's because we didn't go. That's possible. But I think that when you look at what they did with Roswell, it's the same thing. It's like, how did you lose 3 years or 2 years worth of communications? I don't know. Probably exactly how you lost the NASA tapes, the originals. Very strange. Why did this get deleted off the internet? Why does this Bob Lazar video get deleted off the internet that I think was even deleted off my computer once? So I put it on multiple external hard drives of Bob Lazar explaining the physics of what he learned at Area 51. This is like 40 minutes of Bob Lazar explaining physics on UFOs, and it's deleted from the internet. I mean, you could probably find it if you really look, but it gets very hard to find. Should have millions of views. He went on Joe Rogan. It's like one of the most popular Joe Rogan episodes of all time. But this also looks like it's getting deleted. I have to download this now because they're going to take it down. Apparently. And it's because it's the most compelling and best video out there. It's better than the ones that were declassified by the military. That were, like, to be quite honest with you, they're crap videos. But supposedly, they are the least convincing videos that they have. From what people have said. And, here's this. What is but look at that. Guys, This is real. Like, I'm not saying I know what it is, but it's something. And it's moving with physics that look like it's not what we have that at least has been declassified. It's not moving with jet engines or rotor blades or anything like that. But there's so much to the subject, and I mean, I've just scratched the surface a little bit of this tonight, but maybe this is it.
Speaking of conspiracy theories that actually have truth at the bottom of them, the Corona relief bill the president signed last month contains a provision that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It directs the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, to disclose what they know about UFOs within 180 days. So what are they going to tell us? Nick Pope is an expert on this subject. He's former UK Minister of Defense. He's an official of the UK Ministry of Defense. He joins us tonight. Nick, thanks so much for coming on. What do you think we're likely to learn? Will they obey is the first question. Will they actually tell us what they know? And if they do, what will they tell us?
No, they're not going to. They didn't tell us what they know at all.
Well, this is going to be a very interesting year for UFOs, that's for sure, Tucker. And yes, they will definitely have to produce this report within 180 days. So we're going to get this by late June. It has to be unclassified, but can have a classified annex. So the answer, what the public will get, maybe not a lot, but what the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee will get, hopefully a whole lot more, and hopefully some answers to these questions that we've been asking for months now. What is going on in our airspace? What has the US Navy been encountering, and what is it that has been in these classified briefings that we know some senators have already had?
What do you think they're likely to reveal?
Well, it's interesting because Senator Marco Rubio said he would almost rather this was alien, because if it turns out to be China or Russia, then we're in big trouble, because the sorts of speeds and maneuvers and accelerations that these objects are capable of really is concerning. And I hope that we're going to find out about that. It's interesting, just before Christmas, there were some leaks. Sitting in Office of Naval Intelligence is an organization called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. They're probably the ones drafting this report. Some leaks suggest they have not ruled out the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
and there may
that's
be
good.
physical evidence of the existence of these craft, whatever they are. Have you heard that?
Yes, I've heard talk of so-called metamaterials, and I think this report really will have to disclose. I mean, what the Intelligence Committee want to know is everything in government is fragmented. They want to know who knows what. They want a single official named and put in charge of all this, and this is going to...
Okay, so I'm looking for a clip, but I can't find it, of Tucker Carlson talking about a picture that supposedly exists, that the Pentagon has confirmed does exist, that was taken on an iPhone by a video, not a picture, a video that was taken on an iPhone by someone on a Navy vehicle, Navy ship, and I think it was a video. It might be a picture. And a triangular craft busted out of the water right off of the boat and shot up into the sky. And they took a photo of it. And a good photo on an iPhone. Not like it's not black and white and like grainy because it's taken from FLIR system on an infrared camera on some type of, I don't know, FLIR system. But it's not. It's an iPhone full color picture, detailed, and the pilot, or not the pilot, the taker of the photo wanted to release it. The Pentagon said no. But the Pentagon did confirm the existence of the photo, and Tucker Carlson is asking why we can't see the photo, and they have not showed us the photo. So, when people say why isn't there evidence, it's like, I don't know. Actually, the more you look into this, there's lots and lots of evidence. This was a scratch of the evidence that I've been looking at over the past year, and I'm only looking at things that have some backing to them, not just, random stories, I guess. And, because anybody can come up with stories, but I think there's far more evidence out there than we think. And we assume that every video we see online is fake. And some of them are surely fake, but some of them are probably real. And it's interesting, Bob Lazar asked his superior when he was working at Area S4, the ultra-secret subset that's even more high security than Area 51. How do you keep this a secret? And the guy says, it's the easiest secret in the world to keep. It's been leaked multiple times. And, we just deny it. And basically they also purposely put out a bunch of disinformation. This has been confirmed by people whose job it was to put out disinformation. The government does, intelligence agencies do this all the time about everything, not just this. And they're purposely making it harder to distinguish what is real from what is fake. And so the evidence has probably been all around us, and we just have not believed it, or you've either believed all of it or you've believed none of it. The reality is that we should believe some of it. Craft from Antarctica, lost tech of World War II. I think that in World War II they were working on some of this stuff. By the way, I also do think they recovered craft from Antarctica, and that's I think there's stuff going on in Antarctica, and that's the reason why we can't go involving this. I think there's ruins in Antarctica from a previous civilization, and maybe this tech is from the remnants of that previous civilization. Maybe some of it is from aliens. I would bet, though, if it had to be either or instead of both, I would bet that it's tech from a previous civilization. But maybe not. I've witnessed UFOs all my life in the redwoods of Mendocino and in the desert in San Diego. I believe you. Totally believe you. I have never seen a UFO. I will say that. And that's probably also partially because I never have wanted to. And, I really haven't. I would be absolutely terrified. But yeah, I've never seen a UFO. I'll leave it at that. But um, I know people that have, who I trust very much, like, and they have seen UFOs, and like they're people that grew up near Air Force bases, and like they know what's normal and what's not, and uh, like they were one of them was like a mentor to me growing up, and he straight up told me, he was like, I saw a UFO near Kingman, Arizona. And there's also like a reported crash retrieval from Kingman, Arizona. Um, that was, there's Roswell wasn't the only crash retrieval that has supposedly happened. There's Kingman, Arizona, and there's Aztec, New Mexico, and there's lots of there's been multiple retrievals supposedly all over the world, but Roswell was the one that was so huge because it was not because it had occurred, and not even because it had the most witnesses. It actually didn't have the most witnesses. Nobody actually saw it crash. Whereas that's not true of the Aztec, New Mexico crash, supposedly, where people did see it crash. But in this, they did not see it crash. They just found it after it crashed. And so, but the reason why it was so huge is because it was our military that said they got it. It wasn't like kooks. It was the Air Force that we trusted with nukes that said, we recovered a UFO. Or not a UFO, a flying saucer. So, if you want to look more into this stuff, I highly suggest Richard Dolan's YouTube channel. There's so much there, and he's a very sound, like, person, I guess. He's not insane. I don't know how many people are as insane as we think they are, but probably less than we think. But even still, Richard Dolan is very composed. And that's what I had looked for in this subject, because I'm not a UFO guy. Like, I've had weird relationships, I guess, with the subject over time, because I did believe Bob Lazar when I researched this in like middle school for that report that I wrote, basically, the paper that said that, the government was morally obligated to tell us if they did. And I didn't even know if they did at the time. We had to argue a moral position. That was the point of the paper. And so I was trying to think about, like, I was very into airplanes, like, not UFOs. And I was into this, like, the SR-71 Blackbird and the Stealth Fighter and, like, the Aurora, like a spy plane that supposedly exists, was made. And I was just into that stuff. And then I was like, I had to pick a paper topic to write about, and I wanted to continue my research on the airplanes that were being developed at Area 51. So I picked a topic that would allow me to continue just researching Area 51, essentially. And so that's why I chose it. I wasn't even like into the aliens. I was just like, what's a thing that will let what I want to do be actually research that I'm required to do now for this huge project that we had to do. It was like the biggest paper I had ever had to write at the time. And so that's why I chose it. It wasn't because I had an interest in aliens, but I was like surprised to figure out Bob Lazar's story. I also suggest listening to Bob Lazar's episode on Joe Rogan, and looking more into his story, the debunkers will try and debunk it, but you can't debunk it at this point. He's confirmed as being listed as an employee in the Rolodex that was put out at Los Alamos, and his W-2 has been confirmed, and he knows things about Area 51 that like you wouldn't know unless you worked there, and there's all kinds of disinformation that's come out about it, and some people have said who used to work there said, oh, he just used to scan radiation badges or something like that. He didn't actually work on UFOs or when he was stationed at Area 51. And it's like, then some people said he never worked there, and all of his educational history has been erased, and like some of his attendance in MIT was specifically mandated by the government for the sake of a classified project, supposedly, so there isn't record of it, which also makes sense. I mean, the guy worked on classified projects his whole life. Also, this exists. Maybe. It's the maybe it doesn't exist. So this was the front page of the paper for let me show you, for Los Alamos, which is the lab where, Los Alamos Labs is where government does everything. This front page. This is Bob Lazar. This is his Honda. He put a jet engine in it. And it says, Bob Lazar isn't kidding when he says his car runs on a jet engine. The physicist at Los Alamos National Laboratory modified his compact car for a jet engine that can propel it to 200 miles an hour. This is the real hot rod, Los Alamos AP. The custom California license plate reads Jet You Bet. This isn't the idle, boast. This car has a real jet engine in it, and the engine can move that car up to 200 miles an hour. The car already was in the family, and it had room to hold the engine. So with a little modification and a little outside help, a Honda became a jet car. There's no real reason except for going fast, said Bob Lazar, builder of the engine. It's going through various transitions, and it's always half done. Okay, this was the front page. This was deleted digitally at first, but when the government was trying to discredit him because he went public and went to the news of Las Vegas, and it was one of the biggest stories in the world, you can look it up, Bob Lazar and George Knapp was the reporter who broke the story in 1989, I think. And I mean, it was world news. Like, there was like all over the news in Japan, and it was everywhere. And he said, our government is hiding, UFOs and technology, and I worked on it in the desert. And basically, like, there's a whole story of why he revealed it, and it was because lots of things happened, basically, involving his family, and him not being... He got caught showing his family and friends the test flights. And so he got scared and went to... they were like, you have any idea what we're going to do to you now? And then he went to the news. And he covered his face and had his voice disguised at first, but then he ended up thinking it was better to just be public. But they missed the hard copy that was in the local library, because that's where the local library keeps records of the paper. And what happened is how he got the job at Area 51 was Edward Teller, which he was the father of the hydrogen bomb. Okay. went and gave a talk at Los Alamos and ran into Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar noticed he had the paper in his Teller had the paper in his hand, and Bob Lazar was like, "Hey." Bob Lazar went to go see the guy Edward Teller's talk, and he ran into him outside and was like, "Hey, that's me on the cover of that paper, by the way." And so they got to talking. Bob Lazar wrote him for a reference years later when Bob Lazar was living in Las Vegas for a job, and that's how he ended up getting a job at Area 51, which makes sense, an enormous amount of sense. People who work at the Nellis test range, which includes Area 51, get hired from the national labs all the time. And who else can get you a job at the most classified project in the world other than the father of the hydrogen bomb? It's quite the reference. So it's quite a story. And there are an enormous physics implications. I think that the reason why there's an uptick in sightings is because of whatever these things are, they're aware of where we're at in physics right now. They are aware of the work being put forth by all these people, maybe me. I'm serious, completely serious. Because they would know which work to take seriously, not like it doesn't matter whether or not they're not looking at our universities and being like, "Is the university, is it peer reviewed? Is that peer reviewed? Or I'm not going to take that seriously about physics unless it's peer reviewed." You think then they're doing that as they whiz around in their warp transportation? They don't need to know what our peer review systems approve of. They just know what looks like the tech that they use. And I'm telling you, geometric unity, emergence theory, sentient singularity theory, constructor theory, like these works are the work that would be Stephen Wolfram's work. All of this would be paid attention to probably very closely by them. Because, and I'll end it on this, there's this scene in Star Trek, and I didn't even get to this. I'm so like scatterbrained. It's not scatterbrained. It's I'm seeing like this picture all at once type of picture, and it makes me dyslexic and not able to spell, and also jump around when telling a story. But when I was talking about Star Trek, there is this like Galactic Federation rule, I guess, that like you can't reveal yourself to the native population until they develop warp transportation. And I'm telling you, that's a brilliant idea, because if there is a level of tech in which all of a sudden we are welcomed, or right after we build it, or we are destroyed right before we build it, it's it's the ability to have warp transportation. That is the line that they're looking at, and they're either waiting for us to get right to that level, and if we get to that level, they're either going to destroy us all, or, which I don't think will happen, or at least maybe even if they try, they'll fail. Like something, trusting God. That's what I trust in God, very much so. Like completely. And when I step back and think about it, I'm still an emotional person and have worries, but like then logically I trust in God. But these beings will either try and destroy us right before we invent it, or they will welcome us right after we do. But this is this clip from Star Trek that is very interesting. And then I'm going to go. This is non-interference. The Prime Directive, that's what it's called. Star Trek Prime Directive. I'm not a Trekkie, guys. But this is such a great clip from the beginning of the last Star Trek, or one of the last Star Trek.
Spock, nobody knows the rules better than you, but there has got to be an exception.
What's funny is just remember these UFOs are like coming out of the ocean lately and like all kinds of stuff. Just watch this clip.
Action violates the Prime Directive.
Shut up, Spock. We're trying to save you, damn it.
Stop it. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Spock, we're talking about your life.
The rule cannot be broken in an instant.
Try to get it back online.
90 seconds to detonation.
Spock over here and over there. What would he do? He'd let you die.
Basically, they need to save Spock, but saving Spock means revealing themselves to the native population, which is not technologically advanced yet, and that is like against the rules. And they break the rules, obviously. There's the native. Our Navy is seeing this basically right now. All the time. Okay. This is just released.
On a pitch-black night off the coast of California, newly leaked video allegedly shows one of the U.S. Navy's stealth ships tracking an unknown object in the sky. And after a few minutes,
Splash. Mark bearing a range.
the 2019 footage obtained by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, who last month released another video of an upside-down pyramid UFO hovering above a Navy destroyer.
This is part of a much larger series of events that we're going to be learning about.
The Pentagon
So literally it just went into the water. And we see them come out of the water. And we see them go into the water. Very strange. It's just like that, it's just, they were hiding in the water, and just like Star Trek. So wild. Anyways, this topic is fascinating to me. It's also infuriating, because I do think that the government's hiding something, and I think that it's possible that corporations are, I mean, it's not impossible, it's inevitable that corporations like Lockheed Martin and McDonnell Douglas, Northrop Grumman are all hiding. All these aerospace companies all have access to tech that they're not telling us about. And that's very frustrating. I understand why. I mean, it's literally a bargaining chip to get whatever you want from the world. You have the most powerful information in the world. You have information and access to physical craft and bodies potentially that like nobody else has access to. You have the biggest bargaining chip even against the government. I think that this project has gotten away from the government. I don't think the government is in control anymore of this project. I think it's either in control by these aerospace corporations, or, as Chaim Mashed stated, it's also possible, and you have to entertain the idea, as crazy as it sounds, because this is 2021, and we think about what has happened in the past year. If you the government has revealed UFOs, admitted UFOs exist, even though they've done this before, actually, a couple times, but we just forgot because they never tell us enough for where it sticks with the public. So every few decades this happens again. And then we have the world shut down due to escaped viruses, and Donald Trump was president of the United States. Hillary Clinton lost being president of the United States. So many things, unexpected things have happened that were against what we all thought was going to happen. Whether you think they're good things or bad things, doesn't matter. It just matters that, it's just crazy. It's crazy. You got to entertain the idea that are crazy ideas. And one of those crazy ideas is that one of the reasons why this information isn't being given to us is because it is these beings themselves that are making our corporations and governments hide it. And they're the ones who are saying, do not tell them. Who knows? But we're going to keep talking about some more of this stuff a little bit, doing a deep dive. I was going to talk about morals tonight, but I've decided to save that discussion for after my wedding. It's going to be, I think it's going to be more impactful then. And it's also I'm going to have revelations between now and then, I guarantee, on that subject. But just check to make sure there's no more questions that I can answer, and then I'm going to say goodnight. Do you know the work of Robert Sepper? No, crap. Who is that? Let me look real quick. An anthropologist. Species with amnesia. I'm guessing he proposes redemption through sin. I mean, some of these things I kind of understand what he's talking about. I'm not saying go out and sin, don't, but I mean, everybody sins, but avoid it as best you can. It is not a good thing. But I do understand that idea on a macro scale, not on a micro scale, but on a macro scale. Interesting. Never heard of him. All right, thank you guys. Yeah, I like the idea that a rancher, a military officer, and local media would all mistake balloon wreckage as an alien alien stuff in 1947. Anyways, hit the like button, subscribe, message me on Instagram to join the Discord. But yes, please hit the like button and share this with anybody who you think will find it interesting. If you have clip ideas, send me a timestamp where you think it would be a good clip on Instagram, or send them to Theory of Everyone Clips channel. Join our Discord by, like I said, messaging me on Instagram for the link. Also, go to my website, sentientsingularity.com. Sign up at the bottom of the homepage for my email list. I will not spam you, but once I start talking about the moral implications of a theory of everything, which is vast and probably going to be the best topic and most important topic of this channel, we're going to get censored. We just will. It sucks, but we will. I have plans to deal with that potentially in the future, but they are long term, and in the short term, we might have to do some platform jumping. And if you wish to follow this work and continue to follow Sentient Singularity Theory and any advances with it or progress or associated projects of which are coming, then it helps if we can keep in touch. So thank you again, everybody. And this tomorrow at 7 p.m. I will be doing my Discord discussion open call at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So message me for the link to the Discord and I can send it to you. Other than that, I will speak to you guys next week. Peace.